Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have an opportunity to hear the opening remarks from candidate Sue. Candidate Sue?
Thank you, David Sue. I'm actually a relatively newcomer to living in the 5th Ward. They redistricted in what was a portion of the 1st Ward to the 5th Ward. And so I think the reason why I ran, put my name on the ballot, is because I think the city is gone in a really different kind of strange direction that I don't think we should be going in. So it seems to me that we're not getting the services we need because it's a matter of favoritism and directing money toward things that don't really help us all, just help certain people. The process of accountability through audits, where you see the interaction between the city council and its code, which is like a playbook or a rule book, and making sure the administration implements that strategy correctly, and having that in documentation is what I think we need to do. I've also talked about the overpopulation of the city. Politicians seem to really be attracted to doing a lot of housing development, but as we saw recently, the school district is got problems. 90% of the high school students in public schools couldn't pass the state math exam. That's a really, really serious problem. The other thing I've talked about with the public is that there's a $18 billion transportation project coming through the corridor in the Northeast, the largest public works project in the United States, from Boston to Washington, D.C. We're not going to get a direct connection to New York City. We're not going to get directly connected to that route other than to transfer in Secaucus. That's a huge miss for our community. They said that there could be an increase in property values of up to 19% if we were connected to this project, and I think we really need to make sure that happens. I've been very concerned about the chaotic nature of council meetings, and I think it just serves as a distraction from the more serious issues that we need to get involved with. If I could just take a minute and talk about my background in the city. I've lived here over 30 years now. I was essentially invited to live in Patterson, to live in what they call the artists' housing over on Van Houten and Mill Street. I was very concerned about a development project at the old ATP site that they wanted to just build townhouses there. And I fought that development for many years, and the controversy, 3 New York Times articles, numerous television spots, all these activities created so much attention to the Great Falls that it caused interest in revisiting the idea of a national park, and the park was created. More recent years, there's the Vistas Park now that they're talking about, and I was able to do a lawsuit to stop that development, and the stopping of that development, or the slowing of that development, gave the opportunity for Green Acres to come in and buy the property, and that is now the newest 8.5-acre park, one of the largest parks in the city, to come to fruition. I've served some titles in local government, wanting to volunteer and contribute to my community. I was the chairman of the Patterson Zoning Board and served 2 terms on that board. I was the chairman of the Urban Enterprise Zone and served 2 terms there. When Jeff Jones became mayor of Patterson, I was asked to do essentially an audit by being the chairman of a public safety, police, and fire department transition team. And we didn't direct the actions of those departments, but we looked into it to make sure everything would work as best as they could. And most importantly to me, a favorite role that I've had is that at my building, the Essex and Phoenix Mills, where I've lived for over 30 years, pretty much except for maybe 1 or 2 years in the beginning, that whole time I've been the tenant association president, the only person to be elected repeatedly, and I've been an advocate for my neighbors and my neighborhood, which I'm proud to do. Thank you very much.
I'll begin with Mr. Su. If elected councilman, given your experience as an artist, what steps will you implement to ensure that the arts are thriving within the Fifth Ward?
Thank you. I think really we can have events in our parks where we give an opportunity to children to express their creative activities in the town. We can have art events at various venues where people can make paintings and display their work. I think it's a great idea to create these types of engagements and activities with the kids, but really most of that it takes place in the school system at this point, so we'd have to interact with them directly, and I think that would be a great opportunity. We could certainly build on the Arts Council we have in town and look at the city code and talk to them and see what type of resources they need to make this a bigger feature in our community.
What steps would you take to improve the quality of life for the students in the Fifth Ward, given the opportunities that they have currently for recreation?
I think really with the students across the board in the city, we have to do a couple of things. One, we have to make sure the city is safe. So moving the ball with regard to public safety, making sure that the community is safe would be an excellent step in the right direction. It's not good to go anywhere in town if you don't feel safe. With regard to recreation, I think we need to make sure that there are opportunities at all the local schools, because children should not have to run across the whole city just to find an opportunity to do something. So I know they do have after-school recreation programs, and certainly East Side is a big part of this town, in the Fifth Ward, and would just consolidate those efforts there. Continue good programming and push to keep the opportunities moving. Really, these questions are excellent questions, but I think we have to really look toward more global issues as well as the feet on the ground issues, which is definitely a feet on the ground issue. Thank you very much.
What experience do you bring to the table from your past involvement within your community in the Fifth Ward that helps you fulfill the role of councilman in terms of leadership?
Thank you. Excellent question. So I'd say it falls into a couple of different categories. One is the feet on the ground category. So I've been a tenant association president for decades at my properties, 144 units of housing, making sure that the residents at my property and people in my neighborhood get the services that they should through their landlord and the community from the government has been a big part of that work. In the past, I've had a number of roles in the city which I've touched on, but I've been principally a community activist, fighting for the opportunity that I felt could be born at the Great Falls and the Historic District. I'm the recipient of a New Jersey State Historic Preservation Award for work in education regarding the Great Falls historic area. That type of knowledge passed on to our youth, knowing our history, knowing our past, has been key. As the former chairman of the Patterson Zoning Board, I understand that the way we use our land defines how we live. The time I spent working in public safety with the transition of the police and fire department and public safety into the new administration for Jeffrey Jones gave me a real deep insight into how that operates. And my work with the urban enterprise zone also let me look into economic development and the types of things we need to build our community. And also my work in pro se litigation, doing lawsuits without attorneys, up to the Supreme Court successfully, briefing the Supreme Court, lets me understand how the law works in a way that is really pushing close to the level of what lawyers do. And I think that's a very key missing component at the city council, because they get manipulated by the attorneys and the officials, and it's really quite a shame to watch. Anyway, thank you for the question.
Candidate Sue, you can ask your questions in the order you choose.
Councilman Velez, I don't know if I'm too close here. Councilman Velez, you were just saying that the Planning and Zoning Board are responsible for real estate development in Patterson. That's actually not true. That's actually not true. The root of planning and zoning is that there's a municipal master plan which lays out how the city is to be developed, where there's housing, where there's commercial, where these different things are supposed to take place, how much housing, how much commercial, and where. The city council is the one that enacts that document. They take a reference from the planning board, but they're the one who does that. Then there's a zoning ordinance which codifies, it says, okay, buildings with these many apartments inside of it, this type of commercial district, et cetera. So I'm very concerned when you say that it's the boards that do that you're not understanding that. And why is it that you don't understand that? My question, why don't you understand that? You've been doing this for a long time.
I don't know, are you doing a statement or doing a question?
That was a question. Why don't
Hold on,
you
you're not going to
understand
rebuttal with me,
city
sir.
council defines it?
Sorry.
Candidate
asked
Sue,
a
allow
question.
Candidate Velez to respond to your
Yes.
question.
So first of all, this gentleman that asked that question stood in one of those boards way back, and he was removed from that board for poor attendance and other issues. Now, he knows that the board, the planning board and the zoning board, follow a lot of state statutes. And those state statutes, we could follow them through the council. 2013, we adopted a redevelopment zone that was supported by the state of New Jersey. So that document is approved by the council and delivered to both boards. They are the one that examine by witness, by engineering, by traffic engineering, by planners, by anybody that want to construct in the city of Patterson, by attorney, and they go in front of those board and they made the judgment to approve those projects. I don't know what part he don't get, Mr. Sue.
Candidate Sue, you have an opportunity to ask an additional question of Candidate Velez, or you can move on to Candidate Mejia.
No, I'll ask another one of Councilman Velez, please. Councilman, as Sebastian was saying, you know, you have a close tie to real estate developers in town, and the city's clearly overpopulated. In 2021, I went to the city council and I talked about how the mayor was boasting of 4,000 new units of housing, could easily mean 4,000 more students. Now we have a crisis in our educational system in Patterson. We see 90% of the high school students failing their ability to pass the state test in math. All right? So you've pushed a lot of this development. You've been a strong advocate for it. But here's the consequence. The consequence is overcrowded schools. We don't have enough resources for the kids to get a proper education. And, you know, how do you feel about that? You've pushed for something that's actually created a lot of harm. And are you going to continue to do the same thing? Are you going to continue to push for more housing? So I guess that's a two-part question, and I hope you can answer it.
Well, I'm going to continue answering your question. Once again, look at yourself at the mirror. Look at yourself before 2016, our city was a ghost town. Businesses was not in a Main Street, Park Avenue, Summer Street. All that section was a ghost town. We have a lot of abandoned properties, ladies and gentlemen. The redevelopment zone allow us to construct, take those abandoned properties into our tax rolls. That's why you see redevelopment, that's why you see growth in the city of Patterson. Listen, you know what's the relation with me and developers? That we talk about the needs of Patterson. Let's ask how many donation those individuals, you so-called development, redevelopers or whatever, give to our city, not to the council, to the kids of the city, to the parks. How many donations they give to the city to benefit the quality of life of our city? I don't know why people hating seeing the city growth. Why you hating seeing the city growth? When he moved, well, he was forced to live in the Fifth Ward almost a year and a half ago, so I don't know how he could speak about the Fifth Ward